Hello, this is part 2 of a webinar series brought to you by CSCAN and Profound Impact. Part 1 can be found on the Profound Impact YouTube channel, and I invite you to make time to watch it as it discusses the challenges of successful research collaboration. Today, we are going to discuss the best practices and tools for success. Good afternoon, my name is Cheryl Petrosevic, and I'm an account executive at Profound Impact. Profound Impact is a data-driven company that uses AI technology and proprietary tools to automatically match researchers with potential industry partners and funding sources, saving administrative time, increasing targeted funding opportunities, and adding insight into additional collaborative research opportunities. We will provide a short demo of our Research Impact product at the end of the panel discussion. Today, our panelists are going to discuss what makes an industry researcher collaboration a success. Our panel is rich in experience, consisting of industry, funding, and researcher partners who will share their stories and best practices, outlining what elements make a successful collaborative project. Nuggets of information will be shared with you, focused on setting the stage to work together to produce successful research, training, recruiting, and technology transfer outcomes for all participants. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of the land of which we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the effect of residential schools and colonialism on Indigenous families and communities, and to consider how we are and can each, in our own way, try to move forward within a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. It's my privilege to introduce our moderator today, Adele Newton. Adele, a graduate of the Faculty of Mathematics at the University of Waterloo, has developed and managed a broad range of programs and strategic international partnerships in the university, technology, and not-for-profit sectors across Canada, within North America and in Africa, Europe, and China. Her career is focused on connecting diverse partners from technology, science, and the arts to work together on exciting and innovative projects. She is currently editor of the Profound Impact's Research Spotlight and Research Impact features in the Profound Connections newsletter. If you want to receive a copy of the newsletter, please sign up from the link on profoundimpact.com newsletter. Adele, please take us away.
Thanks, Cheryl. And it is my honor to introduce our great panel today. We first have Jennifer Moles, who's the Director, R&D Collaboration and Commercialization at the Ontario Centre of Innovation, or OCI. Jennifer's recent efforts have focused on innovation adoption while helping to build institutional capacity in innovation procurement and direct investment into early stage companies. She brings close to 20 years of program management experience, providing strategic and operational leadership to deliver outcomes, managing $80 million plus in program funding in multiple innovation sections: health, education, ICT, digital media, and clean technologies. Prior to joining OCI in 2011, Jennifer was involved in the early development and subsequent evolution of the Health Technology Exchange, a provincially supported organization that facilitated connections in medical and assistive technologies. She played a key role in securing over $30 million in programming funding to support commercialization activities in the Ontario Health Innovation ecosystem. Jennifer holds an EMBA from Quantic School of Business and has completed further educational studies focused on leadership and marketing management, facilitative leadership at the Schulich School of Business, York University, mini MBA, McGill University, post-diploma marketing management, Centennial College, and diploma in advertising at Cambrian College. Welcome, Jennifer. Vio Onut is Principal R&D Strategist at the Center for Advanced Studies, or CAS, at IBM Canada, and Adjunct Professor at the University of Ottawa. Vio completed his PhD at the Faculty of Computer Science at the University of New Brunswick and specializes in topics related to network security, such as simulation, detection, prediction, and visualization of network attacks, and in-depth study of network features for attack detection. Currently, his main research focus is in the area of Web 2.0 application security, compliance, and crawling, but also intelligent sensor technologies for context-aware security risk assessment. Throughout his career, Vio was part of many research and development collaborations with institutions such as Daimler Chrysler, AG Research and Technology Center in Berlin, National Research Council of Canada, Institute for Information Technology in Fredericton, the City of Fredericton, Network Infrastructure at Q1 Labs in Boston, and of course, CAS IBM in Ottawa. And finally, George Shaker. George has been principal scientist and head of research at Spark Technology Lab since its founding in 2011. In 2017, George was selected by the Office of the President of NSERC among a group of 10 Canadian professors to discuss Canadian research advancement in the Internet of Things area at the special NSERC NRC MOST meeting in Ottawa. George is also adjunct associate research professor at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Waterloo. He oversees wireless activities in the Sensors and Devices Labs at the UW Schlegel Research Institute for Aging. Previously, he was with Research in Motion, or BlackBerry, my colleague, and with Georgia Institute of Technology. With more than 15 years of industrial experience in technology and more than 8 years as an adjunct faculty member leading projects related to the application of wireless systems for healthcare, automotive, and unmanned aerial vehicles, George has many design contributions in commercial products available from startups and established companies, including ComDev, BlackBerry, Google, Spark Tech Labs, Bionim, Linsong Systems, Ecobee, Medela Health, Nerve Technologies, Thalmic Labs, General Dynamic Systems, and Omron Technologies. So, as you can tell from these very long but important introductions, we have a group of people here who have a lot of experience in working collaboratively between research and industry. And we're going to just have a conversation about that, about those collaborations. And I'm going to ask some questions and just have this discussion. So I'll come to each of you. So these collaborations between research and industry, I wanted to talk about what the primary goals are of those collaborations. And Vio, I'm going to start with you, just randomly, and ask you what your primary goals are when you're facilitating those collaborations at IBM CAS.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. I want to add one thing to the introduction of my role. In the past decade, I've been overseeing approximately 150 research projects involving 35 universities, led by 90 professors and around 360 students, and around 360 IBM staff members. So the introduction about me was more on the technical side, on the security side, but I do manage the IBM Canada research and development portfolio. And my answer is going to be from that angle. So not from my, security background, but more so from managing all these projects, which, we constantly have around 40 to 50 projects per year. So what do we look for when we talk about R&D projects, projects that we do with our product teams? Having a large portfolio of projects, each individual product team will have their own goals and will have their own ideas about criteria of success or success for their projects, as well as the professors will have their criteria for a success of a project. Typically, our projects will look into commercialization of R&D into products at IBM, enhancing the technology, but also recruitment opportunities for master's and PhD students that we primarily work with. So, the range is coming from pure recruiting point of view to innovation into products. The majority of our projects will care about innovation into IBM products.
Thanks, Vio. And speaking about innovation into products, George, you've been on both sides of this as well, both as a faculty member, a researcher, and in the companies you've worked with. Are your goals when you've done these collaborations similar to what Vio described?
Hi, Adele. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for having me here. Yeah, I would say definitely it has to be in any of these projects. It has to be a win-win to whatever level you can think of. It went to the company, went to the faculty, went to the school, went to the students, right? So this has to be kept in mind when coming up with projects that are jointly worked on. And it's often times you have to realize that when companies need some help from a researcher to work on a topic, it's usually because their R&D team is capped, for example, or they want to explore an area where there's no speciality within their team to focus on, right? But in the same time, they are looking for that being done within a acceptable cost, and cost here includes time and includes the financial side of things too, right? In the same time, the researchers are looking for money to come in to support their activities in general, right? And grow their team, recruit more graduate students, support these graduate students. The graduate students themselves need these opportunities because they understand it could be future employment opportunities to them, right? It's an additional funding, or that's how they get their stipends covered. But also an important piece of this is they're becoming more connected to industry, right? The hands-on experience that they gain. So usually in any of these projects, whether I was wearing the academic hat or the industrial hat, to come up with one that's going to be interesting for everybody to work on, you always have to check the mark on the win-win-win-win for all participants.
Thanks, George. And Jennifer, from your perspective at OCI, is there anything you would add to those goals?
So I would echo both Vio and George's comments. I think the number one key to success of a collaboration, though, is managing expectation up front. So what does the company need to get out of the relationship, and what does the academic team need to get out of the relationship? And to keep having regular check-ins to make sure that you're still getting what you need to get out of that particular collaboration. At OCI, our R&D, so industry academic collaborations, the objective of those collaborations are to commercialize intellectual property. So the company essentially works with the academic team, who would be like an R&D arm for the company, to help them potentially, generate new IP to be protected and to grow and scale, with an overarching outcome of how to generate economic outcomes for the province of Ontario. So how can this particular project eventually stimulate job creation, retention, follow-on investment, etc. But, so I do understand what George and Vio are saying. Like, in particular, the academic team need to get something very specific out of it. And so as a result, they're getting that industry challenge and their industry experience, and they're helping to build their expertise in that area. And as a result, because in the province of Ontario specifically, I would say there are so many amazing academic institutions and interesting programs, unique programming, and we're training some very highly qualified individuals at the undergrad, master's, PhD, postdoc level. And those individuals, in many instances, that are working on these projects are then moving into industry post-project, because they see that natural fit, that is the skill set that company needs to continue on and to be successful.
Having worked in this area for many years myself, when I hear the term IP, my hair always starts to stand up on the back of my neck, because that's where complications often arise. So we're going to talk about that later. But I wanted to talk a little bit, just expand a little bit to your point, Jennifer, about the training of highly qualified personnel and the recruiting. Vio, how big a piece is that? You did mention it when you talked about goals, but is that a top level benefit to IBM for working with researchers?
It again, it depends from product team to product team. We have some product teams that are very specialized into, so for instance, compiler optimization. When we have PhD and master students that are working on those domains, they become so specialized in that particular field that they become, a hot recruitment strategy for us, because throughout their studies, they are trained, they become experts. And if they join IBM, they will be, ready to go from the day zero. There is no ramp up period anymore. Actually, they are, some of them will be pictured as experts into a particular field. So that is extremely valuable for some of the product teams that we have. But overall, I tend to agree that commercialization of the work, enhancements in the products is the top priority. Mm-hmm. And having the qualified masters and PhD is a benefit that all our teams are, benefiting from. But I don't think we will establish a project just as a recruitment and nothing else. Right? The recruitment is a bonus, and for some projects is a big bonus and a big focus.
And George, I want to talk to you a little bit from the researcher point of view, because I know you're one of the, even as an adjunct professor, you're one of the top research professors at ECE and at the University of Waterloo. And from your work, both from the research professor side, but also from the industry perspective, how important is the piece about making sure that students and researchers work on real world problems that arise as a result of those collaborations?
Yeah, so it is a very important piece, because you need the students to be interested, right, in the research project. And if they don't see value in what they're doing eventually, right, let's say they're enrolled in a PhD program, right? So they're looking to solve a very big problem there. That's 4 years of their life, maybe, or even more, just to try to solve the problem. And if the problem is not exciting enough and it's deemed more industrial, then maybe it's better for them to leave and work in industry then, right? So defining a problem that's worthy of a degree and also relevant to industry, it's not an easy task. Usually it's trying to this balance is a bit tricky, but it has to be done. It's must have check. And actually this piece differentiates a lot between going back to the recruitment point you raised earlier, it differentiates between a program like a research program at the university versus hiring an intern or a co-op, because a company can easily get an intern for 4-8 months or a co-op for 8 months, whether undergrad or grad level. That's no big deal. Many companies do that when they have a specific target there, and it's more into the implementation side, where I would rank it less R&D maybe, or sometimes they want to keep it all internal. That's a different story. But when it's really challenging and really futuristic, that's where it belongs to the university to do the research supported by a company. And that's where the grad students will be very excited to work on problems like this, because again, it bridges the two worlds together.
So, I mean, you've all talked this about win-win-win, and I think obviously that's a component of a successful collaboration. But what are some of the other elements? You've all worked on collaborations that have been successful, and that's why you're here today, to talk about what makes successful collaboration. So, is it tech transfer? Is it the communication? And Jennifer, I'm going to go back to you because at OCI, I know you manage a large range of these collaborations.
So outside of managing expectations, I would say the biggest thing is it the right fit? So you have to be able to, maybe it's a brand new relationship, but it's a relationship that you're both on both ends willing to put the time in and build and have it be successful. So not all relationships and research projects are successful, and I would say it's the communication piece. If there isn't regular, open, fair, transparent communication with both parties, it tends to fall apart. But in many instances, the relationship is strong and continues into other projects, and they keep using the same project team because that is the team of the individual that may have students in a specific area that they have found work well for their company and support their needs. So that's really common, is the repeating of projects once the relationship is established.
And Vio, when you and I spoke earlier, when we were preparing for this webinar, I believe we talked about the importance, as Jennifer says, of communication. I know that CAS has an annual conference. What other ways do you work together with your teams to ensure that ongoing communication?
So yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jennifer. Having a lot of projects, well, a lot for, it depends on what you're comparing with, but 50 projects that are running in parallel with many different teams. One key ingredient that we always look for is this regular meetings. Our projects, they have weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings. If it's a project that meets every quarter, where there is some sort of presentation, and then at the end, we meet next quarter, we are not interested in those type of projects. We are gonna can those projects and get rid of them because nothing comes out of them. When you have constant interaction, it's a win-win for both academia and the IBM team and the industrial partner, because there are ideas that get exchanged. You have this outside-in perspective on things, and things can pivot. Right? Our typical projects are 3-year projects, right? To support master students, for PhD students. And as Jennifer was saying, a 3-year project can be extended with another 3-year project that supports a different idea or a build up on the idea. But even within the same project, things can change. The professors and students can discover new things that the product team could be interested in. The product team can change direction, and then we need to pivot. If those interactions are not constant, and that is what we call in-kind contribution, because all our projects, they do have financial contribution, but the in-kind contribution is extremely critical. Every time when a funding agency values that in-kind contribution, it's we are super happy, because without that, there is no really skills transfer or any kind of transfer, IP transfer. So that is, for me, that is the key ingredient when I review an application for a proposal for anything. Before I look at the actual topic, I look at the people. Do I have people from IBM? Do I have people from academia? Do they agree on the subject? And is there a plan for constant interaction? And if those ingredients are there, you're set up for a good project.
George, would you have anything to add to that? I mean, you've run so many different projects, and again, from both sides. I'm curious your experience, if that jives with Vio's and Jennifer's.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with what Jennifer and Vio mentioned. I think it's expectations have to be very clear, and that's why typically you need to see a very clear and I would say detailed research agreement placed in place before you start the project. And in a research agreement like that, you have to list the key milestones, the key deliverables, the format of the deliverables, the key people who are going to be involved, and then the frequency of meetings. All of this have to be agreed on before starting anything formally, right? So we actually do that before even finalizing, like when we work a lot with OCI, for example. This has to be done before we even write the OCI grant application, right? Because that sets the expectations very clear. And if there's no agreement at that stage, you can imagine the mess the project is going to run into later on, right? So these details and I think are important, and making sure the HQPs are aware of that document too. They have a copy of that, they review it. The researcher has to discuss it with his team, so they are, and there's many of them, sometimes this is their first time, right, running in projects like this. They don't know what's expected. Sometimes in academia, things are a bit laid back, depending on the program, depending on many things, but it is the reality. Well, people take their time to think about certain problems, but sometimes in industry, people expect more faster pace, right? So every 2 weeks, you have to show me a new presentation, but well, many students are not used to that. So making sure that they understand this is part of their commitment, they have to deliver on this, is very important at the beginning of the project, so that things go a bit smoothly there. The milestone pieces, I think, are also important, because we know it's R&D, you don't know the answer before you start. It's an open question, and you run into many things there, right? So you have to discuss what if scenarios, and that's where the teams will quickly realize if there's a fit or no fit. So engaging as part of coming up with that research agreement, coming up with the what ifs. And well, the researchers, most of them in any company, there's the senior ones who have been through this multiple times, same with academia. So they are familiar with what if. It's not going to be a first for those, maybe for HQPs, but not for the people involved. So they can always come up with a matrix. What if, what will change in these milestones? And you can't think of all the scenarios, but you can think of some. And quickly you realize if the teams are a fit or not doing that exercise. I find this practice, right? Because if quickly with the what ifs that the academic partner comes up with are not appealing to the industrial one, well, then there are different levels there. They're not going to easily meet somewhere, right? And the opposite happens the same as well, right? So yeah, I would. These are, yeah, as I said, I echo what Jennifer and Vio mentioned. I think this is really a very important ingredient to the success of a project like that.
You bring up a point, George, that sort of anticipated my next question, and that's that academic research culture and industry culture are very different, with very different types of timelines, with very different types of expectations. So how do you effectively establish trust so that people understand the different timelines? Doesn't mean that they're not in agreement. It just means that research works at a different pace than product development. What has been your experience, George, in the best way to manage and manage those different cultures and establish trust?
I think it's really very much part of that research agreement, right? So because in a research agreement, we touch base on who owns the base IP, the background IP, the foreground IP. We make sure that the industry partner, as an academic, from the academic side, the industry partner understands that HQPs have to publish, right? That's the culture in academia. They have to publish. So if they can't publish, they can't graduate. So what's going to be allowed to be published of this work? Which areas are allowed? What type of revisions or revision process that the industry partner would like to have? For example, before submitting an article, they may want to have a 30-day notice, a 60-day notice. All of these things have to be spelled out. I think the more detailed that research agreement is, the less likely the project will run into trouble. And I find that, yeah, spending more time into that piece, I think, makes your life way easier later on. And since it's a document that's usually written by the researcher with the assistance of the company and then reviewed by the Office of Research at the respective institution, and then all the HQPs have to sign on, I think everybody is aware of what was agreed on at that stage before the project starts. So in a way that keeps it going relatively smoothly, I would say.
Yeah, the research agreement, it can take a lot of time, certainly in my experience, to finalize, but without it, you don't have a project. Vio, I wanted to ask you, what happens when, because research, you don't know the outcome, what happens when things go a different way than expected? How is that managed at CAS when different results, or perhaps you've learned that that's a path you don't want to take because of what's been discovered via the research? How is that managed?
I don't think there is a failure in research from my perspective. And what I mean by that is, yes, the type of problems that are solved as part of a research and development project are different than the type of problems that are solved as part of our team delivery and, critical pipeline that, needs to get out there to our customers. And so when we do these research and development collaboration projects, finding that something is not possible, it's still something good. Good for industry, right? So, if we want to explore different opportunities to do something, right? And we all of a sudden we realize that, this is not possible, this maybe is possible one. That's not a waste for us. In the majority of cases, because we have this constant interaction, we have this outside-in perspective that the team benefits throughout the year. And so milestones that were set at the beginning, they are very important. I do not want to contradict anyone, but more importantly is the fact that they work together, and that, some of the milestones can change, shift, be replaced on the fly. IBM is fine with that. And I know a couple of or few funding agencies, they are fine with that too, because we had to, for instance, pivot a project. And we thought, that there will be a lot of pushback. But when the professor said that and IBM said that, the funding agency just, agreed. And so, again, I'm going back to the importance of constant interaction, because that will ensure that everything that is worked on is relevant to both the professor as well as the product team. And there isn't a failure in that, we have now a project that, is going nowhere. Those cases are so remote. And we've been doing this type of collaboration for 33 years now. Obviously, my predecessor did that. I took over 7 years ago. But, the number of projects that I can say, there are, disaster, I don't have those examples. I have projects that are kind of, a little bit wishy-washy, but because they actually meet and talk with each other, it's always a benefit, always a benefit.
I like what you said about there's no failure in research. It's just a different outcome than expected. Jennifer, what's OCI's take on this when things change in terms of goals and milestones?
So, Vio, I like what you were saying about, that some funding agencies specifically will just, take a look, and if there's a change, sometimes they're, totally fine with that. We're the same at OCI. I think you need to look at the research project or the commercialization project as what was the original objective? If we're still working towards the original objective, the path to get there may change, and that's okay. So it's extremely common that The original proposal has a list of the types of students that they would need to work to support the project, but they have no idea who those students are. So those students may not even be identified until, 2-3 months into the project sometimes, or a student leaves in the middle of the project and now they have to find someone else. So change is inevitable for these types of projects, no matter what. So the teams, maybe, especially like during the pandemic, there were significant supply chain issues where the project teams had to pivot and figure out, okay, well, maybe we can't do this piece, so let's focus more on this piece. As long as, again, we're working towards the same objective, it's an open conversation. And, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the project. It just means that, things changed along the way, and you don't know what you don't know sometimes when you're just writing a proposal.
And that's the nature of research.
Mm-hmm.
That's just why it's called research.
Yeah.
We've talked about the value of having, I've heard research, the researcher component of these collaborations called almost the external research team for an industry partner, people who can focus on things that aren't related to the next quarter of product development. So certainly there's that advantage, the advantage of having students have real world problems, the recruiting piece. The IP piece is the part that's always has, in my experience, and I know George and I talked about this a little bit last week, the scariest piece because of the various aspects involved with IP. With every university having a different take, certainly, you have the University of Waterloo, for example, that has inventor owned IP versus other universities where it's managed directly. How is IP successfully managed so you don't get bogged down in dealing, having long and unfruitful discussions with legal departments rather than something fruitful? And George, I'm going to start with you since we had that conversation just a few days ago.
Yeah, it's a tricky topic for sure, right? So many times the industry partner approaches a certain potential academic partner based on their past expertise on the topic and their name that they made working in a certain area, which implies that they have access to certain IP as well, right? And then depending on the institution, and across Canada, it's a huge variation there. But as you mentioned, there's the creator-owned IP model, like in Waterloo, for example, and there are other models there where it's a shared model or a completely owned model by the institution. So sometimes it is the researcher's decision to, let's say, assign all the background IP to a company as part of their need to access background IP to be able to create foreground IP. And sometimes it's not the researcher's say. It has to go through a certain office at the university who can look at it case by case, and they can put a sticker price to the background IP, and they can create all sorts of special clauses. This is only within a certain scope that you get access to that type of IP, for example. And of course, the other discussion, so this is the background IP discussion. There's the foreground IP discussion, because you have the professor and his team working on a technology, but then are they working on it where everything will be delivered to a potential industry partner, and that's it, no access to that IP? What if they want to continue researching on this area, right? So have they given their IP rights in this way or not? So it's a complex topic, and I think we can take hours talking about it, right? It's
which we don't have.
Right? We all spent hours on this topic already in our lives, right? Or years maybe. But yeah, I think again, the key to having a relationship that's very clear and hopefully without any or very little hiccups is defining this as, I don't know, I believe in that research agreement a lot, because you have to tackle, usually there's a special appendix related to foreground IP, special appendix related to background IP, and it involves, again, the researcher, the HQPs, the university. So everybody has to look at it, everybody has to agree, and then hopefully that means that, yeah, we're on the track to a good potential partnerships later on.
Well, Vio, you, as you said, Cass has over 30 years of experience with this. And I'm curious, George mentioned, and I know it becomes an issue, publication. of academic work. How does CAS manage that piece of the IP management?
Yeah, so currently we work with 35 universities. And you can, like George was saying, some universities have the IP, some don't, and all that. And so we handle all of that. But in particular for the publications, we first of all, our agreements are, the IP is jointly owned by IBM and the researchers. And so when it comes to publication, we try first to file patents if it's a technology that IBM wants to protect. And we do file patents. And then after, the patent is filed, we publish as part of our projects. Now, sometimes IBM doesn't need to protect that information, and then it's a direct publish. We are happy with the publication, and sometimes we are in agreement with the professor. We are carving out a piece that we really don't want to publish, but and so it's not part of the publication. And then professors are good at finding the part that they can actually publish out there, right? And for us, for IBM, having a publication is also important. Now, I started by saying we are looking at productization, right? We want product innovation, but a publication means eminence in the space, means that you have external entities that are professors and students that are working on a product that and are enhancing that, and it's also peer reviewed and agreed in the academia, in the academic space, that that's a novelty that is brought up. So we report publications as part of our reporting to our executives teams. And many, if not all, IBM teams are extremely happy to have publications at the conferences.
And Jennifer, you started off by saying how important the IP piece was in commercialization. To Vio's point, publication is also a way of tech transfer. Other than commercialization of IP, does OCI look at other ways of tech transfer that also benefits the Ontario economy that maybe isn't necessarily commercialization or startup companies?
Yes, so I agree with what both George and Vio have been saying, specifically about IP and what the university or academic team get in the company, et cetera. But there's also things like there might not be any IP that's generated as a result of like that respective project that they've worked on, but there might be an opportunity for a validation of the solution or technology by the academic team for the company, which then allows the company to get sort of that credibility into the ecosystem. So the company might be working with the University of Toronto in the AI field, and they've been able to validate with a specific department that's in that area of expertise. That in itself as well is extremely important to a company. Tying a logo like a team, such as University of Toronto or Waterloo or McMaster, whatever the area of expertise that's required to help support validation of their tool, of their idea, that will go a long way, and that will also help them get future funding for other projects. And it also will help them with their own commercialization activities by saying, yeah, we've been able to validate that the solution can work within this particular parameter, and it is successful at this percentage, and will help them with their sales and marketing efforts going forward. So it's not always about just generating IP. It's about the strong relationships and how they can work together, and vice versa, logo sharing, et cetera.
Well, before I turn it over to my colleague Brian and my colleagues Brian and Cheryl, I want to just summarize what this deep pool of experience, and I want to thank all three of you for taking the time, because it's hard to, in 40 minutes, talk about years of experience in doing this kind of work. But I want to summarize that communication, ongoing communication, and a really solid research agreement that covers things like IP management and tech transfer activities are the two sort of foundations of a successful collaboration. Is there anything else that any one of you would like to add before I pass it along? It sounds like that pretty much covers it. I really want to thank all three of you for sharing your expertise. There are people who have never started a research collaboration, and it could be a little scary, but I think you've all sort of given your tips and tricks for what makes it work and even what doesn't. Vio, I liked what you said. If you're only going to meet once a quarter, that's not a collaboration. So thanks very much. And I'm going to pass it along to Cheryl.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Vio, Jennifer, George, and Adele. The breadth and depth of knowledge shared with us today is greatly appreciated. And I, for one, look forward to watching the recording again on the Profound Impact YouTube channel, because I'm sure there's an opportunity for me and everyone else who's interested to learn more. The nuggets of information were just so robust. So thank you all very much. The other thing that we're going to do within this session is, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to do a short demo of our research impact product. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Brian Romansky, and Brian will take you through the demo. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Cheryl. So yes, I'm Brian Romansky. I'm going to show a really quick demo highlighting just a couple of features of our research impact product that happen to align with the discussion we just heard. So we've heard a great discussion around intersection of corporate interests, researchers, and communication. There's also often a need for some third-party funding involved in there. And that's where I think we can help in some cases. Profound Impact, we've had a lot of conversations like the one you just heard. We've worked with colleges and universities. We've worked with corporate entities to try to understand their experiences and their needs in terms of doing joint and collaborative research. So with that, I'm going to switch over to sharing. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share this window. Okay, you are hopefully both seeing a screen and hearing me. Can somebody confirm? Cheryl, can you just confirm that you can hear me?
I can hear you, Brian. You're good to go.
Thanks. Previous demo, I switched over screens and it turned off my audio, and it was a bit of an ordeal. Okay, so thank you. So what you're seeing here is a dashboard screen. So this is a hosted service. This is software as a service that can be customized and tweaked or adjusted to meet the needs of a particular organization or industry. I'm going to go through a couple of key features. So this is a platform that's designed, again, to support the early stages of a research collaboration, particularly where you have a corporate interest, a researcher, and a funding source in particular. So at this dashboard, it's showing that it's aware of a certain number of grants. I'll explain where these come from in just a second. Several $1 million worth of grants that are in the system and available to be matched or applied for. We've got 2 researchers or 2 research organizations, and the system has found 6 matches. So there's 6 opportunities where it looks like there was researchers and funding source and a company interest all match up. So we've got grants from multiple sources. Some of those might look familiar. These are predominantly Canadian funding sources that are known to offer grants that are aligned with corporate interests and researchers. And I'll explain a little more about what these matches and areas of excellence in just a second. So let's dig a little deeper into the information I have. So on the grants, if you're familiar with funding sources for innovation and research, they tend to be posted on a public site, and they're usually fairly complex. These are almost like a contract that gets posted to say, okay, we're offering money to do a certain type of research, and there's usually various conditions and criteria, and there's usually the grant is going to tell you exactly what they want to fund, and there's, when you apply for it, you've got to explain how you're going to align with those goals. So at a research impact product, we'll go out and grab those publicly posted grant opportunities and put them into a standard form. So we try to parse out all of the relevant information, basically a title of the grant, we know what source, which funding agency it came from, when it first appeared. Usually there's an application deadline on these. Some of them are continuous, meaning that they're open application for a period of time. Others have a specific date or a series of dates when they can be applied for. So it's always important to keep track of what are the deadlines around these. There's a budget associated. Now, again, if you've looked at these before, you'll probably realize that the budget is usually not a simple number of, it's $5 million for a grant. So if you click through this, we actually show, here's the context of where that number came from. So yes, this is up to $5 million, but it's payable in, $250,000 up to $5 million. So you get a sense of what the nuance of the grant is about by looking at that. And actually, if I go over here, there's a button where I can look at a summary of this grant. So basically, this screen is showing all of the information that we know about this grant. It's parameterized or segmented into these convenient sections. So I have a text summary of the grant. I have a link of where it was found. I can go look at the original source if I want to. The budget information is here. The deadline information is available. And more importantly, there's a set of keywords. These keywords are automatically extracted from the grant description. It can also include things like special conditions or requirements of the grant can be pulled out and tracked into these keywords and tagged. So this basically is a simplified version to describe, like, what is this grant looking for? What are they trying to achieve? That's going to be important when we try to do a match. So let's take a look next at projects. So a lot of the discussion you just heard was talking about how corporate interests have to be aligned with the researcher in order to have a successful collaboration. So how do you know what a company is interested in, what the corporate interests are? What we have listed here is a bunch of open projects that have been posted to represent a particular corporation and a research project that they're interested in. So like with grants, we've taken these sort of complex project descriptions and parameterized them into a form that our system can understand. So we have a text description of what the research is about, what outcomes are looking for, a title, any dates or deadlines. But again, like we just saw with the grants, we extract all that and reduce it down to a set of keywords. So automatically we extract keywords from the grant description or the project description to identify what this company is trying to do. Lastly, I'll show you researchers. So here we have two different researchers, or actually these are areas of research. So what we find with a lot of organizations is they want to first match to a department or a laboratory or a function within a university or college. So these categories can describe a research lab, which has a certain set of priorities and research capabilities, maybe special equipment or special research topics that they can study. Or it can even be down to the level of an individual researcher, a principal investigator, or even a recent graduate or current student, and what their ambitions and goals are. Again, it was mentioned earlier in the conversation that in order for these to be successful, this researcher is going to be investing a significant amount of time and effort into this project, so it has to be well aligned. So again, like with the grants and the projects, for each researcher, we have a detailed profile of the individual or the lab that is being matched against the other pair. So and to represent the nuances of that person, we have a great deal of information we can extract about them, about volunteer experience, what kind of languages they speak, awards they've received in the past. So we have a fairly detailed profile on an individual. One nice thing about the platform is that you don't have to sit and type all this in. We extract most of this from publicly available information or from a document. So if you have an existing CV or a regular text resume for these people, you can load that into the system, and most of this information is automatically populated. We can also pull a lot of it from public websites. So if the lab has a description on a public website, we'll extract and populate most of these fields from publicly available information, so you don't have to type it manually. Now, the magic of the platform is not just that it tracks all this information, but we have this category we call try matches. Now, this can be adjusted to be any combination of matches that you want, but in this case, we're actually matching a researcher, a company's research ambition or goal or project, and a funding source. So each row here represents one of those combinations. So here we have a researcher in a particular area of excellence. We have a grant source and a specific grant title that's been matched to them, and a company and the project that that company would like to fund or support that all seem to match together. Again, using the data we extracted from those profiles, we're able to find that this combination seems to make sense. Now, we present this information to a research officer. That could be somebody at the company who's taking the first step in looking at the matches and reaching out to the researcher, or it could be at the institution where they look at these and they decide, you know, I think I want to reach out and contact the researcher or the lab, the head of the lab, to start this process. In all cases, we use directed communication. So rather than just sending out a regular newsletter and saying, here's all the things, you decide which one do you want to match with, we actually have a very targeted communication method. So as a user of the system, I get to review all of these matches and I get to pick the ones that I think are most relevant. So I'm going to start with this one at the top, and I see a description of what was matched. I see which keywords are a match between the lab or the individual and the funding source and the research project. And I can see that this happened to show up 2 weeks ago is when it was matched. Maybe I haven't checked in a little while, so I'm seeing this now. What I can do next is I can choose to send an email message out to the researcher or to the company to say, you know, I think there's something here for you to take a look at. This looks interesting. And if I send that, an email is sent directly from the platform to the registered recipient, and it tracks the progress. It recognizes that, okay, something's happened. We've taken a step towards moving forward. I can see here that this, if you notice before it was saying pending, but now it says this message has been approved. And if I happen to look over my email, as a user, an email message just came in, and it's saying it's a targeted message. In this case, I'm Catherine Albert playing that role. It's a targeted message to me explaining what this match is about, and I don't have to log into anything or go look at anything. I can just click through and say, yeah, I'm interested in that. That makes sense to me. And that pops me right into the platform to show me a little more detail about what that program is and what the next steps are. So this will show me, again, what needs to happen next and what I've committed to or what the program is. And if I save that and I pop back over here to my view as the research administrator, I can see the progress. I can see that by refreshing the page. I can see that somebody has responded and shown that they're interested in this project. So all that communication happens through the platform. The end user doesn't necessarily need to log into the platform. They just have to respond to email messages. So it keeps things very simple from their part. There's nothing for them to learn, nothing for them to do. And from a user's perspective, you're managing all that communication, all those matches, all in one central place. I think I'll slow down there and say, you know, I think based on what we just heard in the conversation of the importance of that alignment of the researcher, the funding source, and the company and their goals, our interest is trying to take advantage of information available about all those things and find the best possible match, make it easy to bring the right people together for successful research outcomes. One thing that was mentioned in the discussion was often you'll see that a company will keep going back to the same researcher or the same source because they've had a successful relationship in the past. And that's great, but it's not great for innovation. It's great from a relationship perspective. But if you really want to get outside the box and do things that are new and different, you want to mix it up with different sources and different people. This platform can help you do that. We can help you find people who are aligned with your interests. So with that, I will pause there. If you're interested in learning more, you can contact info@profoundimpact.com or contact Cheryl. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Brian. You know, it's always exciting to see our product in action. And if you wanted more information or to meet our team, we're going to be at the CSCAN conference in June. Brian and some of our other colleagues will be there. That is June 5th to 9th. 2023 at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec. Registration is now open. So if you want to see our product again, you want to learn more about our product, as Brian said, info@profoundimpact.com, or you can email me directly and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. And if you'd like another demo, we can certainly make that happen as well. So thank you for your time today. I hope everyone has a marvelous day, and let's go out there and get some innovation and research happening. Thanks a lot, folks. Take care.